friends. You know what time it is? No, I don't. Is it time for Claudia? And friends. And friends. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I know we have Claudia on the line, and I'm just curious to see if her friends are there. We have Claudia and her friends. Hey, Claudia.
Hey, how are you guys today?
We're doing well. I mean, Bill Johnson just lifts us up. That's a great way to start a Monday.
Well, I listened quite a bit to the beginning where I had the time to listen about optimism, and I will hit on that later in the show when we're talking about as a joke or reauthorization.
There we go. Okay, well, it's your time. How are you doing, and what do you have on your mind today?
Well, let's start out and make sure I have both my gentlemen on the line. Dave Mylett, are you with us?
I sure am.
And CHUCKIE DIAZ?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Okay, we're all on board. Up front, I just wanted to mention something, and then we're going to go ahead with Dave Mylett's interview first, since he has another obligation. He'll have to leave. But I did want to mention, if the listeners and everyone could, I mean, we're always needing prayer, of course. We have so many of us ill. But one of our members is going in for a fourth surgery for her cancer. She was a New York police officer serving security down at one police plaza where she was continuing to serve on duty. She's had a lot of issues, and she wrote us last evening. I thought I'd just read this off real quick, that she's about to undergo her fourth surgery for her cancer on Tuesday, tomorrow, and she thanks God that her medical care has been covered by our World Trade Center Health Program, the current surgery, and this is her fourth. This one will cost around $60,000, and she's praying for the continued medical care for all of us, because she doesn't know what she would have done without it. So just a brief testimony from our friend Beatrice, and keeping her in our prayers. So that said, let me move on to our interviews, because I know that Dave has another obligation to fulfill, and so he's going to need to leave us a little earlier. Let me introduce Dave Mylett. Dave was with the New York State Court Officers, and Dave, maybe you could start out explaining a little bit about, what the court officers are and what you folks did on 9/11.
Absolutely. New York State Court Officers are peace officers in the state of New York. New York being one of those states that makes a distinction between peace officers and police officers. Some of our states don't make as much of a distinction, but we have it here. I think New York State Court Officers are probably more empowered than most peace officers in the state, because we can actually execute warrants. We don't do arrest warrants, but we will execute bench warrants. Outside of that, within our jurisdiction, which is the state of New York, we do pretty much the same thing as police. And we're working in felony courthouses, supreme courthouses, family courthouses, landlord-tenant courthouses, surrogates. We're all over the place. I think there's between 4,000 and 5,000 of us in the state of New York, one of your agencies. And our academy is located at 123 Williams in New York City, which is a mere block from the Trade Center. The biggest of our buildings is at 100 Center. It's the busiest criminal courthouse in the world, and that's definitely within walking distance of the Trade Center. So many court officers were involved on that day. Did I miss something?
No, you're fine. We can hear you.
Yes, I was assigned at that time as a sergeant working in Suffolk County, Long Island. And I was on my way to work when I heard the first plane strike on the radio. And I dismissed it as being something minor, relatively minor. I knew there'd be some casualties, but I didn't expect there to be much more in the plane. And then when the second one hit, I was about 3 minutes away from work. I had to pull my car over, and I was sitting there in shock. I made it into the building, and most of our court activities that day were either adjourned or delayed, severely delayed, as we were all glued to the televisions watching what was going on. Communication with the courts in the city was difficult at that time. And it wasn't until that night that I was able to get in contact with some of my friends, having worked in Manhattan at 100 Center Street. And they let me know that they were down there trying to assist in finding our people and everybody else that was missing. In Suffolk County, we wound up over the next couple of days waiting for our agency to respond, and we had signed volunteer lists to go in to do something on an official basis. But it became apparent that our leaders in Suffolk felt that our assistance wasn't needed, and it might even be created difficulty. And I found that to be not the case in talking to my friends. So a number of us volunteered, and after work on Friday, we made a convoy, and we drove in. We were welcomed at all the bridge stops. We weren't turned away as we were told might happen. And we wound up getting, I think it was St. Paul's Chapel down in there. We got there, parked our vehicles, and proceeded down towards the Trade Center. It took about a half hour, 45 minutes for us to get over the shock of the situation. And when we finally did get over that shock, we started looking for people that were alive. At that point, we were still thinking this was a rescue and recovery effort. We had 3 guys in Manhattan at that time that died in the collapse of the towers. Tommy Jurgens was on the job for about 3 years, but he was an Army medic. He had served several tours as a medic. He was a volunteer fireman in Lawrence, Long Island, and he was also an EMT for that fire department. So he jumped in a jury bus with a number of other court officers who had volunteer fire or EMT experience, military experience, to go down to help. At the same time, a guy was a little bit late to work. Mitch Wallace, he's a senior court officer, and he was on his way into work with his medical bag. He always carried it. He had performed a couple of life-saving procedures on the Long Island Railroad, so he always had it with him. And he saw what was going on when he got out of the train station, and he immediately called his wife and said that he was going to help, and he wound up going down in there too. And from the academy, just about every instructor ran down to help. One of those was Captain William Harry Thompson. Harry was 51 years old at the time, and he was the most fit court officer we had. He worked on the 12th floor of our academy, buildings on William Street, and he used to use the stairs every day, all the time. If he went to lunch, he used the stairs. If he came into work, leaving work, taking the recruits up and down, and when he got to the bottom or the top of the flight of stairs, 12th flight, he wasn't breathing hard. So he was in great physical shape. All of them wound up losing their lives trying to rescue people at the last instance. They had rescued many, many dozens of people. We had academy people. The head of our academy, Chief Joe Basileri, made it up to the 51st floor of Trade Center Tower before he got turned away when everything started rumbling. He managed to get out. Most of our people managed to get out, but those 3 guys I was talking about did not. So we were looking for them, and we were in the bucket brigades. We wound up working primarily on Liberty Street, in around Trinity and West. We also worked in the Winter Garden area, and we worked at the morgue. Initially, again, we were doing rescue work. We were doing the bucket brigades. We were attempting to assist fire personnel and everybody else that was volunteering in clearing space. We assisted them by clearing the buildings that were pretty seriously damaged so that they could be used to supply these people with medical assistance, equipment, food, rest, medical care. And that was our focus for the first couple of days we were down there. We would work, I don't know, maybe 12 hours and then make a trip back to family. And most of us would. Some would stay, but then we'd be back the next day. It was quite an amazing experience. And I haven't really talked about it in a while, and get a little choked up from thinking about it. It was surreal. We had dust everywhere. The gray, the pale dust was absolutely everywhere. We wound up clearing a triage area so that they could establish some medical equipment there on Liberty. And in doing that, some representatives of Peter Luger's restaurant, big steakhouse here in New York, wound up asking us if we could help clear a restaurant area so that he could feed the firemen. we immediately jumped on that, but there was no power in that block. So we went behind that block to Cedar, and we found some electricians there, New York City electricians, that were arguing on how to establish power to that block. One of the guys that was with, a fellow named Bob, court officer, also electrician, started giving them ideas, which they kind of stopped at, and they knew what they were doing. And they eventually told Bob, "You think you can do it? Go ahead." So about an hour later, Bob had electricity back on that entire block, which was pretty amazing.
Wow.
We had, that was good. We had another building adjacent to it that had what we called Home Depot. There was a fella named Paulie that was down in there. He's an electrician, and he just went down to help after his shift at work on 9/11. And for some reason, the fire chiefs that were in the area trying to make some order out of chaos pointed at him and asked him to help get shoes in line, boots in line, so that the firemen working on the pile would have replacements, because it was eating up the soles pretty good. So he started doing that, and other people saw that he was organizing equipment, so they saw him as being a boss. And they eventually put him in charge of what they called Home Depot. Chop saws would be shipped in bulk. So there's hundreds of chop saws coming into the site. Paulie was directing them. The fire chiefs would come to Paulie and ask him if he could help them with some stuff. And Paulie would say, "Let me see what I can do." Get on the phone, and he'd contact people, and all of a sudden he'd be supplying them. So we got him running too with electricity. We did quite a bit there. We were supplying morgue. They had a temporary morgue set up, so we were supplying them with ice. They could get the ice just so far with the trucks, and we would carry the ice down to the morgue. It was quite a bit that we did down in there. Excuse me. We had some of our personnel, firemen, who had confined space search certificates, and they went underground. A fellow named Chris Lamandola, a friend of mine, lieutenant, when he passed away from 9/11 related cancer, he was senior court officer at the time. He went down into the pile with another court officer, and this is a crawling operation where shards of steel are all over the place. You have to try and penetrate different layers. Very difficult. He found a fireman. So he extracted part of that fireman's torso. He got what he could out, brought it up to the top, went to somebody in a boss's uniform with the fire department and said, "Don't put this in the morgue yet. Leave it here. I think I can get the rest of his body." He went back down underneath. 20 minutes later, he came back. He could not get the remainder of the body out of his girder in the way, but he did get the guy's wallet out of his pocket. Unfortunately, the body had been moved to the morgue. So Chris had to go to the morgue and search through the body bags until he found the fireman's body so he could place the wallet with it. We did all sorts of demolition and construction. We did a lot of supply work, traffic control. We had scenes where I remember about a dozen officers from Pennsylvania showed up in pristine dark blue uniforms with a dog. And these were search and rescue experts from the state of Pennsylvania. And they came in to help. And they had no idea what to do. They got there and they were struck by the surreal aspect of it. So I wound up arranging for the bosses down there to give them some direction. And I'm sure that they provided a great amount of help. Certainly. We set up barricades. We had a building on Cedar Street, 125 Cedar. It was attached to the firehouse there that was collapsed. And they shared a wall. In that building, there were apartments. They were kind of high-end apartments. And we were outside that, and a judge from New York Court, civil court, Barbara Kenny, came by and saw us in our court officer uniforms, immediately ran to us and asked if we could help her find out whether her friends were safe. They lived on the 5th floor of 125 Cedar. So we escorted her up. And in doing so, we found that her friends weren't there. They had left their laptop. We let her take the laptop to try and figure out if we had safes that she saw that were open, and they wouldn't have left their safes open. There must be a looter. We went back into the building and found that other safes had been left open. We wound up grabbing some of the National Guard that were there. They had no weapons, but we gave them shovels, and they watched the doorways to make sure nobody came out. And I sent an officer to get NYPD. We wound up getting 3 NYPD officers to assist us in going through the building to try and find this looter. Upon coming to the 6th floor of the building, one of the officers was having a hard time getting into one of the apartments. He was banging on the door. It was partially open, but it was like somebody was pressing on it. So we all drew out weapons, not knowing what was behind the door. And eventually, the officer was able to knock the door open, and there was a snarling Doberman pincher pointed right at us. And we drew down on it, and we realized this is a statue. And we looked in, and the entire side of that apartment building had been blown away, and the blast had knocked this statue, blocking the door. So that was a bit of comedy added to it. Again, there was gray dust everywhere. We wound up doing a lot of goodwill work down there, too. We would take care of people that were sobbing inconsolably. We would pass out cigars to the firemen, candy bars, help them find where to eat, bring them shoes or whatever. So we were pretty involved. So I hope that gives you some information.
That's amazing. I mean, that's amazing. So much that you just shared that I certainly hadn't heard before. What a wonderful testimony. And I know that you lost 3 of your officers on 9/11 that you spoke about, and you did mention Chris Lamondola. I know that you've lost 8 that I'm aware of since 9/11 to the 9/11 related illnesses.
Correct. And it's not just the ones that we've lost. We have dozens that are currently receiving medical care for 9/11 related problems. Much of it is cancer. And the first one first friend of mine that died outside of the guys in the city that died on the 11th was Jeff Harry. Fantastic guy. I remember being with him. At one point, we're doing the bucket brigade, and we get called off the bucket brigade because a belch of fire erupted from the ground and prevented anything from happening until they took care of that. So we all backed up on Liberty, and we're all standing there, and about 3 minutes passes by, and Jeff grabs a broom and a can and starts sweeping the street. And he's taking the dust and he's putting it in this can. And he did that for about 15, 20 seconds before other people started joining in. And eventually we had dozens of us sweeping the street. He was an exceptional man, and it was a great loss. We also lost Bill Mayday, who was a captain at the time in our building. And he went down in there, and I recall seeing him completely covered in dust to the point where I didn't think that it was actually him. I thought it was a statue. And that was when we were taking material out of a building that at one time had been a bodega type thing on Liberty, and disposing of it so that it could be used as a triage area. There was a dumpster in the area, so we were taking these hot bars where they keep all the food and everything, and dumping it in the dumpster. I remember coming back the next day and noticing that dumpster had been marked airplane parts. So I found an FBI agent, and I informed him, and he kind of shrugged his shoulders and said, they're going to sort it all out. Don't worry about it. But Bill was a great guy, and also a great loss. We had another guy.
Well, you're all great guys.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt on that. Go ahead.
No. Well, Teddy Leosakis was one of the guys that was in the academy the day of, and he assisted. I can't imagine how many hundreds of people in getting to safety. The people who responded on that day were part of the greatest rescue in American history, possibly in the history of the world. I don't know, maybe Moses did a better job, but not by much.
Wow, well said. Very well said. And I know you're a bit short on time, and I wanted to also mention the other individuals, since you've talked about so many of them. Dexter Taylor was the first one that I'm aware of that passed back in 2004 from 9/11 related cancer. And then I'm not sure if I'll say Chris's last name, Christoflakis, and Joe Volano. Thank you. And Bill Faulkner. Yeah, all these Irish names get a little hard for me, So,
Right.
Yeah, I had many Greek friends. I can't always get them all right. So what an amazing story that you've just shared. All too often we forget, there's so much publicity about the NYPD or the FDNY because the numbers were so staggering, and even the Port Authority. But the court officers, as well as DSNY, and we'll be talking to Chuckie about his experience in a few minutes, but you guys have not been heard as much as we would like you to be heard. And so
I appreciate that.
I'm so thankful
all
you
the
came
other
on.
court officers do.
Yeah. Well, we love you, and we appreciate you and everything that you did then and since. And you're coming on the show and being a witness for all of them really shows the depth of your service. And like I was asking you earlier, I noticed that you have a big family involved in law enforcement. So maybe you could share that real quick.
Law enforcement family, absolutely. My dad was NYPD. He was one of the first scuba divers in NYPD. He wound up training people on the east end of Long Island and doing search and rescue with that. I've got uncles who were detectives in NYPD. I have cousins and nephews in there now. I have two brothers that are chiefs of police, one in Bellevue, Washington, one in Corpus Christi, Port Authority, Texas. Yeah, it's a law enforcement family, there's no doubt. And I remember hearing you last week speak of we're not heroes. I think you were referred to as being a hero. And I understand why people say that, but I think it's important for people to know that most all of the officers from NYPD and most all of the firemen from the fire departments that went down into this mess on 9/11 and all the days after, and all the other agencies, they didn't do it for the money. They didn't do it because it was their job. They did it because that's what you do. You help people. If you hear someone's in trouble, you go help them. And it's just that temperament that leads us to do these things. And that's why all of my friends in the courts went down in there. The fellas that contracted cancer, that's why they went down in there. That's why you went down in there. That's why I went down there.
Well, that's very well said. And one of the things I'm consistently saying is it's not what we do. It's who we are. Yeah. And you just summarized that up beautifully. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And thanks for the time.
Is there anything else you might like to share, Dave, before you have to run?
Thank you very much for the forum, folks at the radio station.
Well, we appreciate you, and I'm so glad to call you a friend and brother.
Very good.
Really, thank you.
You do great work, Claudia. The time you're spending is unbelievably worthwhile. Unbelievably worthwhile.
Well, it's all of us together to make this a go. Now, I'll ask you one last question before I cut you loose.
Sure.
If you could talk face to face right now to the powers that be over in Congress as they're working on our Sajoga bill, which hopefully will get passed this week, is there anything you'd like to say to them?
I would definitely be attempting to relate some personal stories of wonderful people who have horrible medical conditions from this attitude that we have of helping our fellow citizens. And knowing that those people in Congress, for whatever reason they got in, whether it's selfish or not selfish, they occupy a position that is there to protect the United States, to make us the great country that we are. And they cannot ignore the people that do the same thing.
Well said. Thank you again, David. I know you've got to run. You've got an obligation you need to take care of. But I love you, brother. Thank you so much.
Here.
All right. I'm going to move on now to CHUCKIE DIAZ. Chuckie, you still with me here?
Yes, I am. I'm here.
Okay. You've been so sweet and quiet. So unusual for you. Chuckie is a wonderful man who is really run the gauntlet of all the 9/11 experience and have cancer right now. So, Chuckie, maybe you can do the same as with Dave, just give a brief outline of what DSNY is so people know it's not just, sanitation, that your duties ran deeper than that, and, your experience on 9/11 and beyond.
Okay. I was a sanitation police captain, for those that don't know. Sanitation police were created around 1935, 36, and they took 100 men off the NYPD patrolman's list, and they sent them over to the sanitation department, and they trained them through the NYPD Police Academy, and from there, after 20 years, they started retiring around 1955, and then ever since then, anybody who belonged to the New York City Sanitation Police actually came out of the ranks of the sanitation workers that had applied. So on 9/11, 2001, I was assigned to Staten Island, and I had a inspector with me, and I had also sent a sergeant up to the city to pick up some brand new radios that was going to be assigned to us, and he put it over the radio that a plane hit the World Trade Center. He didn't say what size, anything else like that. Then he said a second plane. So the inspector's wife worked in one of the buildings, so I told him, come on, get in the car, let's go. We followed Rescue 5 through the time Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. And for those of you that don't know, everybody on Rescue 5 on that fire truck were killed. I don't recall the total number, but everybody on that fire truck was killed. I parked a department car outside of on West Street, and the inspector went his way, and I went my way. I made my way to the front of the towers. Along the way, I saw body parts strewn about the street, blood splatters, plane parts. No matter what you saw, the people jumping. That was quite something that I could never describe. I was looking for that sergeant because he had made his way down there, and along the way, I found another one of my sergeants who came with me. As I was making my way to the tower, the fire chief, I don't recall his name, grabbed me from behind and said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going in to help." He says, "No, we got a total recall. We're recalling everybody out." He said, "I'm not going to let you in." I said, "Well, I'm looking for people and I want to help." He said, "We'll go around the back and see if you can get people, away from the buildings." So that's what we did. We went around the back. We were getting people away from the buildings, whatever we needed to do. I'm standing there with my back to the building, and then the sergeant that I was with yelled, "Run!" So I didn't know why he yelled run. I was stupid enough to turn my head and see the building starting to fall, and I started running towards Broadway. I don't know whether the street buckled, whatever happened, but I landed face first in the street. Then I just, with everything falling, I couldn't push myself up with the force of everything coming down. I just put my arms over my head, said my prayers, and thinking to myself, I'm not going to get a chance to dance with my daughter because that coming Friday was my daughter's Sweet 16. I said, I'm not going to get a chance to dance with my daughter on a Sweet 16. So I said to myself, I have to get out of here just to be able to do that. I made a promise to myself that I'm going to be able to dance with her. So the cloud of dirt, the cloud of dust, everything came coming down. I couldn't breathe. I tried to breathe as much as I could. I took small breaths, but every time I took a breath in, the debris and everything else, I was breathing that into my lungs. So then the quietness after the first tower fell, I was yelling out, and it was still pitch black out there from all the dust and debris blocking out the sun. And I heard a voice, and the voice was a school safety agent who was standing in the street, and I was yelling to her and identified myself, and she said, "Follow the light." She had a flashlight. She kept moving it back and forth, and "Follow the light," she kept saying. So I'm digging myself out, and I get to her, I grab onto her, and it turns out she has a broken leg, so I'm helping her and she's helping me. At the time, I didn't know I had a broken arm. guess all the adrenaline, I didn't realize it. So there was a Burger King on the corner of Cedar and Liberty, I believe it was. And I didn't know whether or not it was open, so I was ready to take my weapon out to shoot the glass to get people inside. But then I saw somebody cowering in the corner, so I knew the door was open. So I let a whole bunch of people in. I called my department radio that, assistance. We had people that were injured, and I needed an ambulance. People using the toilet bowl to clean their faces, to get all the dust and debris. I went to hop the counter to see if maybe the soda machines or something like that worked. And when I went to hop the counter, I felt the rest of my arm snap. So I couldn't do that, but the kid who was cowering in the corner at the time jumped the counter, and they happened to use like the Slurpee type machines because it was gravity, it was no power. It was gravity fed, so it let people have something to drink. The ambulance finally came. I put whoever needed to go into the ambulance and let the ambulance go. Then I went back looking for the sergeant that I was with. I was yelling for his name, screaming for him. And here he comes crawling out from under a fire truck, safe and sound. Gave him a big hug. We started, looking for other people, whatever we needed, whoever needed help. We did that. Then he went. I was in a lot of pain at that time from the broken arm. He went his way again to see if he could find the sergeant, the other sergeant that I was looking for. And in the meantime, he left me in the care of a Federal Reserve police officer. The second building started to rumble, and I told the Federal Reserve cop, just go. I just didn't have it in me anymore. I was totally wiped out by that time. And he grabbed me by my vest, and because I was in uniform, grabbed me by my vest, under my vest, and then just pulled me with him. And he says, I'm not going to leave you behind. And he took me, and we ended up inside a Quiznos, I believe on Maiden Lane at the time. And there was people were giving us their cell phones. I made a phone call to my headquarters, which at the time was in Brooklyn. And I told them, to tell my kids, I'm sorry if I don't make it out of here. Tell my daughter, I'm sorry that I didn't get to dance with her. And then the phone went dead. So they all thought that something happened to me. And then there happened to be a lady who had an asthma attack. We didn't have any inhaler or anything with her, so we both went out. Federal Reserve officer and myself went out to look for another ambulance. I believe he found the ambulance, and they took her. I again stayed behind. I lost track of the Federal Reserve officer. And then an NYPD car was driving around and saw me and saw that I was hurt and threw me in the back seat and brought me over. They had a triage over at 125 West Street. And they brought me in there and they splintered my arm up and waited for the ambulance. And at that time, everybody that I was looking for, and including the inspector that I was with, that I drove from Staten Island with, they all came in the building at the same time, and I knew everybody was alive that I was looking for. From there, they sent me to St. Vincent's Hospital. St. Vincent's Hospital casted my arm. They couldn't do the surgery because they were unsure of what was going on. So I had the surgery done following Monday in Staten Island. But our guys, I think 30 of them from the department have died since. The first one, Marcellus Clark, which was a friend of mine, and I worked with him, was a great guy, gentleman. And another guy, Butchie Fanara, he also passed away. And, there's more that are dying every day, and I'm sick with leukemia, and that's my story for now.
What kind of treatment? are you looking at, Chuckie, for your leukemia, and what kind of costs are involved?
Lifetime treatment. I need the medication to keep me alive. Without medication, you're looking at a 5 to 7 year lifespan with the type of leukemia that I have. That's without being treated. So I need the cost of my leukemia medication runs anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 a month, and that's just for that one medication. That doesn't mean that doesn't cover the cost for treatments, seeing doctors, or anything else like that.
And so without the Zadroga, where would that leave you?
Without the Zadroga, that would leave me dead in the water, so to speak.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have a long life expectancy.
How long have you been going through the cancer treatments now, Chuckie?
Since I started my treatments January of 14, I was diagnosed. Actually, today is the day that 2 years ago that I was diagnosed.
So today, 2 years you've been going through this.
Today's my cancerversary, as we call it now.
Cancerversary.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to have, I guess, a bit of a sense of humor in all these things. I know that you've been a huge supporter of Zadroga, and along with it, and I'm going to mention 2 other guys because they've been making phone calls and getting out the emails and keeping people advised, and that would be Sal Anarino, and I hope I say their last names right, and Steve Schmosried.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're good friends and co-workers, and Sal actually was in charge of the cleanup down there. So he's got his issues, and it's something that's not gonna go away anytime soon. That we need help. The Congress has our lives in the palm of their hand. It seems like they really just don't want to do anything for us.
Yeah, now I wanted to hit on one other thing while I've got you, Chuckie, because you work with this really remarkable group. You're president of your chapter of the Blue Knights. Can you just explain briefly what the Blue Knights are and what a wonderful thing they're doing?
Blue Knights is a law enforcement motorcycle club organization. It was started in 1974 by 4 police officers in Maine, and it grew to over 20,000 members worldwide. I'm the president of the local chapter here in Brooklyn and Staten Island, and I feel that's one of the things that's keeping me going. Keeps me busy. We do fundraising. We help people in need. We deliver toys to the kids with cancer in hospitals, and we have a good time doing it.
And we'll be sure to put the website information in case anybody'd like to donate to Blue Knights. We'll put that on our website or in the information that we put out also, because it's a great organization. Certainly want to make sure that we support you guys there too. Just a wonderful, wonderful group of people. And some pretty nice bikes there too. Lots of Harleys.
Gotta have a nice bike.
Very nice bikes. It's a great organization, and it's wonderful that you've got that. That even through your own illnesses, even through your own horrible experience, it shows that, once again, it's not what we do, it's who we are, and the character of the people that were behind those rescue and recovery operations, those guys that went running into those buildings that didn't make it out that day. It is who we are, and it's who you are, Chuckie, and that's just one of the many things I love about you. I know that your folks with DSNY have not been recognized either, really the way that they should be, and there have been 30 post 9/11 related deaths, and so you're here today to be a witness for all of your guys. And
and I blame that on the department. They just don't seem to care. But that goes for a lot of jobs also.
And I know you're working to see about getting that change too.
Yeah,
you and Steve and Sal.
Like I said, I tell everybody, tomorrow's not promised. I'm living for today, and I'm doing what I have to do to live.
Well, I'm glad to have you in my life. So you've been such a good friend, and you and Christine, who's a lovely woman who was with the NYPD, that's Chuckie's right side. She also has issues from her 9/11 service. So both of you are just...
Yeah, she saw action in Mylett, so looking for body parts and other things, and what she saw and what she did, and she deserves all the accolades just for doing her job and what she had to do that day. And now she suffered from thyroid cancer just from being there. So,
yeah. There was just a new report put out today from the NYPD health-related information. I'll try to give you a little bit more on that. It's
that's
so far down my wall. Yeah, it's really wonderful because the NYPD has done a 20-year review of cancers. And one of the things that needs to be pointed out, we hear a lot about firefighters, and, we have an exposure rate higher than somebody like in law enforcement like yourself because of the types of duties that we perform. So this study, one of the things that's so wonderful about is that it shows that NYPD, MOS, or its members of service, MOS officers, who would otherwise not be exposed in their line of work, are actually on the increase, that there is scientific proof to back up that those that were down there on 9/11 are coming down with the cancers. And so it's an amazing report. Some of the malignant cancers that they've talked about, that they see a high increase of those that served down on 9/11 is exactly what you mentioned that Christine is dealing with, and that's the thyroid cancer. Another malignant brain tumors, kidney cancers, and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And all of those are on the increase, and the scientific data is there to show that you guys are suffering, astronomical rates of this. And so it's a wonderful report to see that the NYPD has come out with. We have so much from the DSNY who's been Dr. Berzant and all those fellows have been so on board. And so to see these other law enforcement figures come out is going to be helpful to everybody to understand and have a deeper comprehension of just what everybody's going through, and the data to back it up. We've lost 3 more responders just this week. We lost Steve Santori, who was with the Joint Terrorist Task Force as a team leader. He died of liver disease. We lost Ed Norton, who died of brain cancer. Again, one of those cancers we see on the increase. He's only 59 years old. He served as a safety officer at the site with OSHA. And then we also lost another SDNY member, Frank Fontano. And so that, again, every week I'm reporting 2 or 3 more that we're losing.
Yeah,
and without this health program, we're going to lose a lot more.
Also, that I believe it was Dr. Michael Crane from the World Trade Center Health Program was saying that, it's coming up to the 15-year mark, the 20-year mark. Mesothelioma is going to be coming out also because of all the asbestos that was in that building.
Absolutely, and I think we are going to be looking at that, and that'll take me right into my update about Zadroga. As many may be aware, on Friday, this past Friday, Congress averted a shutdown, a government shutdown, by extending the funding deadline, the omnibus, what's known as the omnibus, until December 11th. And Representative Peter King, who's a Republican representative out of New York, who's been one of the many advocates and champions for passing Zadroga, came out this morning and said that he remains very optimistic, and that people are suffering and they're dying, including all these rare forms of cancer from their work down at the sites. And unless something really goes dramatically wrong, we should get Zadroga passed this week. And Brett Baer on Fox News also was on Friday. And, we're thankful to all the news agencies that get our reports out. And certainly seeing it on Fox is reaching the same types of voices that we're reaching on this program. And that's the Republicans and the conservatives, but the whole spectrum of people that are out there. And Brett Baer had put out that his first statement was, "The story is going to have you shaking your head," because of all the political football that's been going on with this bill. even Commissioner Bratton went down to D.C. last week, and he also met with some of the representatives and senators, and he mentioned also 115 NYPD officers have passed since 9/11. Yeah. 23 were killed on 9/11, and the numbers are astronomical. And a big problem that Gillibrand put out, who's been a huge champion, and the woman, her and Maloney, who put this out initially, these bills, she said, and I agree, it's the lack of urgency and empathy was shocking. And it was a matter of educating the senators and the representatives.
Everybody thinks it's a New York issue. That's the issue there. Everybody thinks it's a New York issue, and it's not at all a New York issue. You know, I try to tell people that it's a nationwide issue, and you know, they don't want to hear it. I mean, they'd rather give money to people who want to do harm to us than take care of their own.
Well, both Ryan and McConnell, I'm sorry.
That's how I see it.
Yeah, well, and now both Ryan and McConnell, for quite some time now, have both come out and said, yes, we're going to get this passed by the end of the year. Well, the omnibus, the spending bill, the new deadline is Wednesday, so we are going to remain, and this goes back to the program that was on prior to us with the pastor about optimism. But we're going to remain cautiously optimistic because we also know that as a political football, almost anything can happen, and most of us aren't going to be comfortable until we actually hit the POTUS to sign off on the final approval.
It's not done until he signs off on it.
Yeah. So we remain optimistic. You know, always hope for the best. Just prepare for the worst. But with Pete King and others coming out, like McConnell and Ryan coming out and saying we are going to get this done, well, we got to hold them to the fire and say, okay, then do it. Let's get this done this week so that next week's show will be a celebration show. And we'll be breaking out the champagne that Congress has indeed passed extra.
I hope you're right. You know, it kills me that not one person, you have all these debates that are going on, political debates, nobody, not one moderator has asked about any of the candidates about the DOTA.
Mm-hmm. Some of the candidates have all signed on board for the DOTA. We have a couple, Lindsey Graham. I mean, we have all the ones running on the Democratic platform have all outwardly said that they support this.
Right.
And then on the Republican side of the candidates, we have Lindsey Graham, Governor Pataki, of course, which would be expected, and also, I'm sorry, my mind is drawing a blank. I know there's another one, but some of the
Rubio,
Marco Rubio. Thank you so much. Some of the forerunners in this race haven't said squat. You know, they come out on 9/11, they talk about all kinds of other issues that they pull in for their own political gains and agenda, but they haven't said anything about the sick and dying people. Now, you have Trump and you have Cruz. You know, these are two forerunners, and Carson. These three guys are in the top three, and they haven't said a word other than their other 9/11 stuff that they bring into it. And the main thing right now should be about sick responders. You know that Trump, and I have the video that shows an interview with him on 9/11 or the next day. He had hundreds of his own people down there at the site working at Ground Zero. So we know that some of those people have to be sick. How can he not say something? How can Ted Cruz, who's moving so far up in the polls, not say something? There's plenty of Texans that are sick. There's people all over this country that are sick. And Ben Carson, a doctor? Come on now.
I don't know why the moderators don't put him on the spot and say it. It should be brought up. I don't understand it. What are they afraid of asking?
I agree. Well, that's sensationalism in news medium too. Well, you know, they're gonna draw to the sensationalized side of things, and we're so quickly forgotten.
That's definitely a news media issue. That's why I'm not concerned anyway. As far as a lot of us are concerned.
I agree. Okay, on that note, since we're really over time, I wanted to ask Dave, Rafe, and Jeff Brown, I'm sorry, if you had any questions for Chuckie. Anything else that you'd like to add?
Well, this is Dave, Chuck, and just want to say thanks for speaking your mind and saying what is. about the first responders on this 9/11 event. Both Jeff and I support you guys, and Claudia and her team 100%. We think it's just a flat shame that those that go and respond to a major event where a lot of people are in dire need and experiencing something that they thought they would never have to deal with in their lifetimes by dealing with planes crashing into buildings and killing thousands, that it's challenging to get support for those that went there just for their heart. You know, it's just beyond us how they aren't jumping through their skivvies to support this. And
amazing, isn't it?
It drives us nuts. Our priorities are our military, the special ops people, our border patrol officers, our law enforcement and firemen, and those that respond to where there's a need. And we're pretty aware of the expenditures that happen in Washington, D.C., and there's many, 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 many programs that they can say no to easily, and to fund your program if it's a balancing act on funds. And Jeff read through, I don't know how many items there were. That was just unbelievable that we're spending money on that. And it could easily fund, those that have put themselves at risk. They're experiencing health issues now from 9/11, and it's just a shame. That's and we're gonna keep trying and trying. We do know some people that are fairly close to some of the politicians that are running right now. We're a person away from all of these guys probably, and they listen to us. So it's up. Listen.
And we know they do. And this has been such an amazing voice for us. We can't thank you guys enough.
Well,
it's hearing our stories and supporting us and contacting these candidates and senators and representatives. We know that you're working a lot for us, and I can't thank you enough. Our whole group thanks you very much.
Well,
thank you very much.
Well, that only works, guys, if we can help nudge these people. It's like pushing, and I hope this isn't offensive to anyone, but it's an overweight person through a door that they can't fit through. And and I hate to say it that way, but doggone it, it's what it is. We gotta get the job done. So our efforts are only of some value if there's a nudge that takes place somewhere from our listeners by calling their representatives to call Ted Cruz and Donald Trump and Dr. Carson, Mitch McConnell, and Paul Ryan to get the job done. I mean, good grief, guys. You want to be known? Do you want to be known for not acting on something where people responded to an event where it was the worst in this country's history? I mean, come on. So it just
I look at it as a death sentence.
It is.
Say it again, Chuckie.
I said I look at it as a death sentence if they do nothing.
Absolutely.
Well, they put people in, our judicial system puts people in jail every day for being an accomplice to things. And I think that's what you're saying with this. You are knowledgeable about this event, this program, this bill that needs to be passed, and it's up for you to do it. I mean, it's just simple, decisions that have to be made here. And
it's basic values. Aren't these very values that, we talk about, you mention on your show all the time? The very values that President Reagan put out there about family, about country, about all these things.
Yeah.
These folks need to remember that American values are important. And part of American values is taking care of the veterans, and we are veterans. You know, that's part of it. Taking care of responders. We're veterans in our own sense also. And so doing the right thing shouldn't even be, it's a no-brainer, for crying out loud. And why these presidential candidates that are the top three in the running right now haven't come out and said anything. What are they going to do? Wait until after Wednesday when it gets pushed? When hopefully it gets passed on Wednesday? Oh, yeah, we backed it. Bull. They need to come out now. And they need to say something now, you know, to support us, that we know that they're with us. Because right now we're not feeling it.
And ladies and gentlemen,
we're not seeing it.
The two people that are on the air with us right now are both sick from 9/11 contaminants. Respiratory issues with Claudia, and then with Chuckie, he's got, you know, a type of leukemia that takes medicine every single week. If he doesn't get the medicine, his life turns backwards. So
as Chuckie said earlier, Dr. Crane and others have come out, I've said it repeatedly on the show, that asbestos and mesothelioma is going to be the next big hit that we're going to take, because we're right at the latency period where that's going to start showing up more. We already lost Felicia Dunn-Jones to mesothelioma many years ago. We're going to see a lot more of that. We're writing, you know, all of us, most of us would say that if we had to go back and do it all again, we would go back and do it all again, because that is the who of what we are. It's not what we do, it's who we are. We expect that these politicians and other people start considering who they should be. And who they should be is speaking out and doing the right thing for us, for veterans, and just doing the right thing. You know, what's just so hard about this? As an old fat woman, I can say, I can squeak through my door, so certainly they can get through theirs.
Yeah. Well, Claudia, our prayers and our passion are with you. I'm going to repost both bills on our Facebook page after we get through today to keep it out there.
Oh, yeah.
You got 3 people that have been on Claudia's Claudia and Friends show that are getting you right square between the eyes of some of the events that they experienced themselves from 9/11. And let's wake up, call your political leaders, and raise hell. Why haven't you done this? This is on your back if you don't proceed. These are the people that help other Americans.
And please especially call those 3 top contenders and tell them if they wait until after Wednesday, their words are empty, that they need to talk out now.
Okay, we'll get the word out. We will get the word out, Claudia. Chuckie, appreciate everything you've done.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks for everything you've done and communicated. I know it's not easy for you. Well, I don't know personally, but I have to assume that it's very difficult. And thanks for stepping up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chuckie. You've been such a good friend.
I appreciate it, Claudia. Thank you.
Thanks, Claudia.
All right. God bless you all.
God bless you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that is Claudia Thomas, Claudia and Friends, that we just had on the Now You're Talking show. And she had David on and Chuckie on. It communicated the reality of what they went through in their lives during that day that they thought they would never have to go through. And because they were subject to the contaminants of the 9/11 event, they are sick. And there's risk of losing this program. How do you pronounce that, Jeffrey? I don't pronounce
well, they call it the Zadroga Act.
Thank you.
For the first death. The man who was one of the first responders who died first was a man named Zadroga, Zadroga. And the act is named in his honor.
Well, whenever she has her guest on like that, it totally engulfs my mind, and my attention to listen to them.
I mean, it's hard to listen to. I hope folks stay with us, but these are the real experiences of that day. And my goodness, as much as I've studied that day, I still hear new things every time we have Claudia on with us and her guests.
Well, you just got to call your representatives, ladies and gentlemen. I'm scanning down here, and I'll do this. I'll get it up sometime this afternoon on Reagan Radio Network and Lake of the Ozarks Radio Facebook pages, and to where we get it out there. And you know, you guys are running for office. I mean, we support Ted Cruz. I don't know why he hasn't supported this. I don't have a clue, but we'll certainly nudge as well as we possibly can on this issue. And I don't know Donald Trump. You know, normally he's a guy that helps others. I can't speak for him. I don't know. All we can try to do is nudge and find out why, and ask our folks that do know these candidates, you know, what's up?